Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Max Verstappen wins a highly entertaining Las Vegas Grand Prix, but mass controversy again coming out of the stewards room after Verstappen completely forces Leclerc off track at the start of the race and goes off himself. Only a 5-second penalty eventually dished out. Leclerc not happy about this, understandably so. As many people have said for some time now, the stewards need to deliver much harsher penalties for circumstances such as this. Verstappen even made light of it on the radio, saying, yep, doesn't matter, I'm just going to drive off into the distance. It did make his race harder though, given the great pace of the Ferrari. But still, Verstappen gets the victory, and arguably that might not have been the case if the stewards dished out penalties that might be more justifiable in these circumstances. Very much interested to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. There was a lot going on today. Before we even get into it though, drama again. This is what happens. You try and get the growth in at the US market, and you get the US, you get the horns in some respect for the US, because after all the delays on the Thursday and the issues with practice and the fact that fans were escorted out, a lawsuit has already hit the timeline and alleging breach of contract, negligence and deceptive trade practices. So Formula 1 will have to deal with that one. But thankfully, the Grand Prix itself was actually pretty spectacular. Anyone who's drove this track on the Formula 1 game knows this track can produce good racing. I will say massive credit is belonging to the FIA for, I think at least, getting the DRS zones pretty much spot on. Like, they didn't, some overtakes were easy enough, especially when there was tyre differentials, but for actual proper passing with tyres of a similar age, the DRS zones were judged pretty much to perfection. And the way the track is designed, I mentioned this before the Grand Prix even, or before the weekend even began, with that long boulevard strip straight with DRS, the little chicane, and then the slipstream run down into turn 17 going into the start of the lap again, that produces some spectacular moments in that final corner. That is a ridiculously high-speed corner with, you have to be very brave to go side by side through there, as we saw a couple of times today. Probably not the most pure racing track from a driver perspective, but in terms of actually creating good racing, I'm a Baku hater, to be honest, but compared to Baku, this was just way, way superior. So the Grand Prix officially gets underway. We can see here in the background the cars on the kind of banana curve, because the straight, or the pit straight, isn't really long enough to actually fit all the cars on. This was the moment that the actual Grand Prix starts, and Verstappen, from the tricky side of the track, I think, with some oil spill that was going on the parade lap, still got a very good launch and was kind of in a position to go for a move on Leclerc going into turn 1. Now, I think everybody knew turn 1 was going to be a complete disaster here. It was cold, there was going to be no grip in these tyres, especially the guys that had sat on the grid for several seconds with everyone else forming up. It was going to be a mess, and a mess it absolutely was. This was the screenshots here of, this is where Verstappen got to. So Russell kept it on the track just about. There was chaos in the background. You can see that no one's keeping it to the inside here. So many cars went off track. This is Alonso who sent it down the inside, got all crossed up and spun around completely, ruined Bottas's race actually as well from a similar position. Hamilton here got spun into, well, he got hit by Sainz in the back because Sainz couldn't get the car slowed down, but at the front of the field was the big controversy because, you know, sure, this is technically the apex of the corner, and Max might have been kind of nearly ahead at the apex, but it's like, it's not difficult to be ahead at the apex if you just straight line the car. Like, anyone can be ahead at the apex if you don't attempt to make the corner. Now, Max attempted to make the corner. He went in very deep. Leclerc also went in very deep. If Max wasn't there and Leclerc did the same thing, maybe Leclerc would have made it, but it would have been pretty close. But, like, this move for Max is, in no way should this be, like, reasonable, right? And there were even some discussions as to whether they'd let him get away with this. But, you know, he just sends it in the inside of turn 1, completely pushes Leclerc off the track. It's not even like he gave Leclerc no room, but he went off track as well. It's, you know, reminiscent in some ways of Brazil 2021, which, of course, Verstappen was not penalised for pushing Hamilton off track on that occasion, and also going massively wide himself. Now, okay, tricky conditions at the start, but when you're taking the lead of a Grand Prix like that should, you know, that shouldn't be allowed. And the stewards did eventually agree that the penalty was justified, but the extent of the penalty, I think, is really when the controversy started to arise. Now, this was the chaos at the back of the field. So this is Alonso, who's spun basically of his own accord. Then we've got Bottas. Bottas then, like, Perez crashed into the back of Bottas and broke his front wing. Hamilton had to take avoiding action and dropped all the way down to like P15 or something. There's more spins and chaos here in the back. Actually, no, that was Sainz, wasn't it? Who then spun round. He had a nightmare start. Both McLarens actually got away with this kind of thing. It was a complete mess. I mean, this is just one more angle here, actually, of, Verstappen and Leclerc still off the track as all the chaos unfolds in the background, actually, and Sainz hits into the side of Hamilton in the background. It was absolutely all going on as you might expect. So lap 1, and this is how it goes. So the two Williams were in position. Obviously, we had like Magnussen up there P7, Gasly was P4, Hamilton dropped down to P14, Sainz was all the way down the field, and Perez actually pitted for a new front wing because they needed to make that change. Put him on the hard tyres and thought, could he go to the end? Maybe not, but it didn't matter in the end with the safety cars. Alonso as well was pretty clumsy and out of control here. Like, surely the drivers knew that turn 1 was going to be a mess. I think everybody knew that turn 1 was going to be a mess, but the fact that so many drivers just went in so deep here was pretty unfortunate for Alonso. Good recovery drive from him in the end, but he did kind of take people's races out. But after that start, Charles Leclerc was on the radio, if this wants to load, saying this needs to be addressed now. Like, we cannot allow this to happen. If he gets away with it, it's an absolute joke. But even the extent of the penalty, Verstappen himself came on the radio and basically said, oh yeah, nice one guys, I'm now just going to drive off. Now, because he actually didn't have, at least in the mediums, as much pace as Red Bull might have been expecting, and Leclerc was very strong, it actually was a closer race than we might have expected, and the penalty was, at least, the penalty did matter today. Thankfully, it mattered. Because if Verstappen had driven off, as I think most people expected him to, the 5 seconds is so irrelevant. Now, they need to do something about these penalties, because 5 seconds for a midfield car in a midfield position is big, you know? Russell's 5-second penalty today dropped him from P4 down to P8. That's a big deal. 5-second penalty for the guy up front, especially in a Red Bull, doesn't tend to matter. So I think there's got to be a better way to handle this going forwards. Now, Verstappen came on the radio and said, oh, I was ahead going into the corner, so it's perfectly fine. But still, like, if Max didn't go off track and he was technically ahead and forced Leclerc off, sure, maybe there's a question. But when Max also goes massively off track, like, there's no debate that a penalty was justified. The extent of the penalty, though, is the real controversy about this. So a 5-second penalty, he also got 2 penalty points, which is the only ones he's accrued. And, to be fair, when you're driving around at the front, luck tends to go your way. You're going to get into less incidents. It's just how it naturally goes. When you're in the midfield and you're fighting, there's going to be more, incidents that naturally occur. Leclerc did say after the Grand Prix, Max apologized, and sure, he's going to apologize. Not like it really changes things at the end of the day. And Max actually, after the race, agreed that, yeah, that was penalty worthy. At the moment, full of adrenaline, I didn't agree with the penalty, but when I look back on it now, I think it was the right call. So he admits, Verstappen, that, yeah, penalty was justified in that scenario. He obviously doesn't comment on quite the extent of that penalty because, I think, as you can totally understand, many people said, as Chris Medland says, it's not really going to matter because he's just going to pull 5 seconds ahead, which in the end, he had to recover after the safety car and everything. And to be fair, when the safety car occurred, that kind of nullified some of the damage because he was then right up on the back of the pack and could make the moves that he eventually did to go on to win the Grand Prix. Many people would say that for an overtake such as that, completely illegal as far as I'm concerned, the penalty should be far more severe. 5 seconds as the default option. Just, why would you not do this? If you're Max, why would you not do what you did? Because it makes more sense to just go for the move as Max, force Leclerc off the track, go off yourself, get the position, take the 5 seconds, and almost certainly have enough pace in the tank and race trim to clear that 5 seconds over the course of the race. Like, why would you not do that? Why isn't Verstappen doing this every Grand Prix? He might as well, if he's going to get a 5-second penalty, and that's the default, then it's better to do that than it is to actually have to try and make the pass on track, which was not easy because the Ferrari was pretty rapid in a straight line today, especially towards the end of that stint on the medium tyres the first time around. So I don't know what you guys think should be the penalty. I think that probably most fans would agree that a 5-second is, for that type of instance, should not be, it should be more. 10 minimum. Like, I am kind of in favour of bringing back drive-through penalties or stop-go penalties that we used to have back in the day, because do we want to be promoting this type of racing? I don't think so. And Verstappen says on the radio, you guys might find it quite funny at the time when he did get the penalty, yeah, that's fine, send them my regards. The team were basically just making fun of it, and as even GP says, you're already 2 seconds ahead, just keep eking out the gap and we're going to win. Now, it actually wasn't so easy for Max in the end, which was good. I mean, if he'd have just driven away, it'd have been even more frustrating. Thankfully, there was still a race in our hands here, thanks to the 5-second penalty. But, you know, Max and the team were basically just making fun of it because they knew they could overcome that penalty. And sure, Verstappen probably wins the race anyway, even if he just slots in behind Leclerc and allows him to take the lead. But I don't think right now the stewards, as far as I'm concerned, are basically encouraging Max to make these moves because they're not penalising drivers anywhere near enough for these type of incidents. The 5-second penalty is just the default, which in the top cars at the front of the field barely means anything. So I think bringing back stop-goes, drive-throughs, I think this should have been a drive-through. I think if I was the stewards, this is what I would do. And set the standard to say, all right, if you're going to make that move again, this is going to be the new penalty. Because if Max knows it's at 5 seconds, why not just do this every single week? Now, in the meantime, there was a safety car because Lando Norris, this is a tricky corner in these conditions. I knew this was going to cause issues because a very fast left-hander, it's quite tight to such an extent that in quali this is flat, no problem. But in race trim, you can probably do it flat if the tyres are warm enough. But start of the Grand Prix, not much tyre temperature, losing the rear around this corner. This is the very fast left-hander. You then have to brake and then turn left and then you go onto the strip. That's where this corner is. Norris has a spectacular crash here, honestly. Loses the rear, slams into the wall, slides all the way along and down into the runoff area. He had to go to the hospital as well just to make sure he was okay. Thankfully he was. So yeah, that was a spectacular incident to be fair. And then on lap 15, Leclerc was actually starting to come back at Verstappen. So Russell was in a good position. Albon was holding on. Poor for the Williams guys today not to manage to capitalise on this situation. And Hamilton as well, he was P15, but he made some progress because the hard tyre today was clearly the race tyre, and that was evident from quite early on. It took Piastri and Hamilton a while to warm up, but once they did, they were into the window, they were making big moves. And Perez as well, after pitting early on, he found himself in a really good position because he pitted lap 1 for a new wing, then the safety car happened, so he just had to bide his time, start making moves, and all of a sudden he was in potentially a race-winning position here, Perez. The big moment really came at the end of this first stint because Leclerc, on the medium tyres at this point, had more pace than Max did, which was surprising for sure. I expected after the first couple of laps, Max would just drive away. That wasn't the case. Leclerc did very well managing his tyres into that stint, and at the end of the stint had straight up more pace than Max. He then got the move done at the end of the Las Vegas strip, which is very rare if we've seen it at all this season. The Max has actually been overtaken on track. Leclerc did it to him here, and Leclerc stays out for a few more laps while Max then goes into the pits. Now, this was a big incident though, because Hamilton and Piastri, they were battling it out. Hamilton got what looked like a pretty fair move. I think it was a fair move, but obviously Hamilton's going to be in quite deep to this corner. Piastri tries to stick it around the outside. Hamilton was ahead at the apex, I'm pretty sure. So to be honest, I think kind of a racing incident. Unfortunate for both parties, but it's like sometimes when someone goes in deep and you try and like cut back and go to the inside line again going forwards, sometimes there's going to be a bit of contact there. So the front wing of Piastri's car hits the rear right of Hamilton's car, and they both get damage from this. Seems like, okay, it was a bit of an incident, bit of a clunk, but it didn't seem like it would necessarily ruin both of their races, but it kind of did, especially to Hamilton, because now when Hamilton started to go down the straight, going down into turn 17, going into turn 1, he could have pit, but he didn't know he had a puncture, but he felt it just as he passed the pit entry that he had a puncture. Piastri then pitted as well because he had some damage they had to resolve, and Hamilton had to do an entire lap then on these punctured tyres, lost so many positions. Actually, on his way through, I'm pretty sure he held up Verstappen. I think Verstappen might have commented on this as well. Yeah, this is a pretty funny reply from Denny, actually, like the Lewis Hamilton gang or whatever they call themselves. I don't know, Team Lewis Hamilton, something like that. And as Luke Smith says, Verstappen said on the radio, he didn't drive out the way, man. He's got a puncture and he drives a normal racing line. Send him our regards. So Hamilton actually was holding up Verstappen kind of on that lap when he had the puncture. But that was definitely unfortunate because Hamilton was making big progress. And honestly, Mercedes today definitely had the pace for a podium. But for various reasons, it all kind of fell apart. So yeah, then we had the big instance with Verstappen versus Russell. So at this point, Perez was still out in the lead. Everyone else had basically come into the pits, and Stroll did kind of a masterclass today, to be fair, as well. Benefited from the safety car, but by staying out in the way that he did, he actually really capitalized Stroll to finish a phenomenal Grand Prix result. So Verstappen got Russell here because after the penalty in the pit lane, he fell behind Russell. So he had to get the move done on Russell, which he eventually did. But he got the move done in a phenomenally, let's just say, clumsy manner. So this is the turn when Norris crashed out of the Grand Prix, this tight corner going onto the boulevard. Now, he sent it down the inside of George. I've been waiting all season after Baku for some sort of Russell versus Verstappen collision because it's kind of inevitable between these two. Finally happened. This, honestly, was probably Russell's fault. He turned in, right? At the end of the day, he turned in and he didn't expect Verstappen to be there. Russell said afterwards that, like, you know, he was in his blind spot. He just didn't expect the lunge and, like, he got penalised for it. I think it's kind of a marginal one, but it's one of these instances that I'm surprised Verstappen went for it, you know? I don't see the need. Why send it there? If he just, you know, bode his time for another couple of seconds, he would have got him, I'm almost certain, on the strip with DRS. By going for this move, I'm pretty sure where the DRS detection zone is, Russell might have even got DRS back on him and could maybe have got the move back through. I don't know, but I think it was a questionable decision from Verstappen, even though it probably was George's fault, to even go for this move. It kind of reminded me of some of the moves that Perez was making, to be honest, in recent races. But he gets away with it because despite the fact that he got damage on the front wing, it must have been relatively marginal damage because he still had mega pace in the car. Russell then got a 5-second penalty for turning in, and then the safety car comes out as a result of this. And this means that, you know, Verstappen was a long way behind the leaders. He was a long way on lap time behind Leclerc. And I think Leclerc probably wins this race without the safety car. I don't know, but I think that the safety car closed up the fields, and that 5-second penalty that Verstappen served in the pit stops didn't really mean that much because then he pit again. He was right behind Piastri and Gasly. They were only on a single stop. And Leclerc, it was really unfortunate for Ferrari. They were only out for, they'd had 5 laps on these new tyres. They could have pit again. They probably should have pit again. But they didn't know what the cars behind them were going to do. And they decided, you know what? We're only 5 laps into this stint with these hards. We'll just, you know, stick it out with Leclerc and hope that he can hold on. But the thing is, then Perez and Verstappen have brand new hards on. And at the end of the Grand Prix, that was always going to be a massive challenge. So I think the safety car was just unfortunate. I kind of want to say, well, Ferrari strat, they messed up. I kind of think that they played it okay. It was just an unfortunate set of circumstances for them because it didn't take long, of course, for Verstappen to get these moves done. Eventually, the penalty went to Russell, so he was now in a tough spot. And look at this, right? This is on lap 28. Hamilton down here in, 17th place. That was a big challenge for him to try and make anything happen there because, of course, he was last. He was dead last, basically, after the puncture that he had. And then the pit stop was like 6.5 seconds. I don't know what Mercedes are playing at. Mercedes pit stops are officially back. Eventually, Perez was able to get the move done on Leclerc, and it kind of looked like Perez was going to be on for the win here because Verstappen was still at this point behind Piastri, so he had some work to make up. But Perez was running a different configuration where his straight line speed was just lower. He had more wing than Max did and was losing a fair few kph in a straight line, and maybe that protects the tyres a bit more, but it definitely compromised him in this situation. And Leclerc, like 5 laps older tyres than his competitors around him. He eventually gets the move back on Perez, and fair play to Leclerc, man. This guy overtook 3 Red Bulls today, which was, he overtook 2, but he did one of them twice, which is a far from an easy thing to accomplish. And then at Verstappen, it gets Perez. More straight line speeds, just comes through the field. Again, pretty tragic for Checo in a way that he had such a great chance with the safety cars. They favoured him so much. The first safety car favoured him by allowing him to pit and staying in contention to be in the lead of the race. The second safety car allowed him to pit for a fresh set of hard tyres, and he should have been on for the victory. But unfortunately for Perez, Max is just better and gets the move done, and eventually gets the move done on Leclerc as well. Leclerc's tyres were then dead after a few laps, and yeah, I think it was just unfortunate for Ferrari. Maybe on a different day with no Russell Verstappen incidents, maybe no safety car, I think Leclerc could have won today because I'm not sure that Perez was making it to the end on those set of hards he put on a lap 2. I'm not sure that was happening. So Leclerc probably would have been in prime position for the 1 stop, and he managed the tyres so well. Definitely driver of the day, I think, Leclerc. Stroll deserves credit for this as well, to be honest, because he went from P19 to P5. Sure, some benefiting with the safety car. There was also drama between the Alpines, Ocon and Gasly, an on-track action. Again, Ocon, he got told, to be fair, he got told mid kind of battle, hold position. He went for the move anyway, because this is what he does. And then Gasly had some engine issues and other stuff that dropped him out of the points. It was looking so good for Alpine. Still, Ocon somehow holds on for P4. And then the spectacular move of the race, really one of the many spectacular moves, was Leclerc on Perez. Last lap dive bomb. And I think that Perez didn't see him coming. Max had even dropped back to try and give Perez a bit of a tow. Not full DRS, but yeah, Leclerc was like 7/10 back. Sends a phenomenal move. And again, for the second week running, Perez finds himself effectively getting beaten on the line. So these are the overall results. Verstappen wins, as he always does. Did have to overcome some difficulties today, no doubt about it. But yeah, if the penalty was maybe what some people would consider to be more justified, then it could have been a very different story today. Or if Sainz didn't get his 10th-place penalty for something that wasn't his fault, and he was up there with Leclerc, I think definitely Ferrari today would have had enough to take the victory. But it doesn't happen. Perez gets the podium in the end. Russell was 4th on track, but dropped down to 8th after the 5-second penalty. So it was Ocon, Stroll, Sainz, Hamilton, who came for, I mean, Hamilton's race was ridiculous. Spun around at the start, recovered to like P8, P7, was looking good, got the puncture, dropped to last again, came back all the way to P7. That was also Red Bull's 20th victory of the season, which breaks Mercedes' record they set back in 2016 for the most wins from a constructor in a year. And I mean, yeah, look at these standings, man. It's actually ridiculous what Red Bull are doing. But Mercedes and Ferrari, after Leclerc's performance today, are basically neck and neck. There's only 4 points between them going into the final rounds. Both Ferraris outscored today, both Mercedes, on a day where both Mercs had good pace. But for various reasons, Russell's, miscalculation and Hamilton's, mainly his puncture and also his lackluster qualifying, really cost them a chance to get some podiums today. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Lots of drama in today's race, it's got to be said. And sure, there were the Vegas-y moments, such as this one where they did the car, they went to the Bellagio, I don't even know why, then they had to go back to the podium. You know, we expect this type of stuff at the Vegas Grand Prix, but at least the track is good, better than many that they race at. It creates some good entertainment, and to be fair, one of the better races of this season. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.